Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy 2021. So happy that 2020 is over. Um, Maybe this is the year that I'll be more consistent and post videos every week.
Ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't.
Well, that is my New Year's resolution, is to post one video every single week for the rest of the year. So actually, one of my subscribers suggested that I do this case, so I'll leave their little handle here, their suggestion. So this is the case of Joseph Fritzl and Elizabeth Fritzl. So let's begin. Oh my God. Guys, if y'all could taste this sangria, or like, I don't know, it's like white sangria, Moscato. It's so good, so good. Let's get into it. So, in 2008, a girl named Elizabeth Fritzl told the authorities that her father had kept her captive in like a basement dungeon for the past 24 years. Joseph Fritzl was born April 9th, 1935 in Austria. He was 21 when he married his wife Rosemary. They had 3 sons and 4 daughters, one of which was Elizabeth. Joseph, I don't like to spend too much time talking about like the killer or the murderer in stories like this, where it's about the survivor, it's about the victim. If it's one of my serial killer Sunday videos, then yes, but just don't think he deserves much importance. He grew up with a single mother who was unloving, and, pretty much just had an unloving childhood, which is sad in and of itself, but fuck that guy, he sucks, so let's not spend time on him. So one day in August 1984, Joseph had asked his daughter Elizabeth to help him bring some things downstairs to the basement, because he had been working on the basement for a while, and it was kind of his spot. So his wife and the kids, they didn't go down there. They just knew it was his spot and that he would go down there and work sometimes. So he had asked Elizabeth to kind of help him bring some, I think it was dishes or something, downstairs to the basement. And she was like, yeah, okay, I'll go. She starts going through the door in the basement, and then lights out. So Joseph had actually made her pass out with a towel that was soaked in ether. And so by the time she woke up, she was downstairs in the basement, kind of not knowing what happened or where did something go wrong. And so he kept her down there, and then Joseph actually ended up telling the police that Elizabeth had run away. So Elizabeth had run away previously, but the police had found her and she had to come back. So this time when Joseph told the police that Elizabeth ran away and she joined a cult, they didn't really pay much mind. They believed him, and they kind of just left it as that. Not much investigation into that. For the next 24 years of Elizabeth's life, Joseph kept her in this kind of makeshift dungeon that he had been building for years. Like, he had gotten permits to build this cellar downstairs, and he slowly started kind of making this makeshift dungeon. Potentially because not potentially, but because he had planned to use it at some point. And so this basement dungeon, it was cold, it was kind of wet, there were rats, it was just an unlivable situation. In the winters, it would get really cold. In the summers, it would get very, very hot. So it was just uncomfortable. And on top of that, knowing that you're held captive and knowing that it was your father, it was just unbelievable. And if you guys see the pictures, you see it looks like a mini little apartment that somebody had built in like a basement apartment. But So at first he had kept her like tied up and had a chain around her waist. But as months went by, he realized that he had her there. She wasn't going to be able to get out. And so he started letting her walk freely. And for months on end, he would just rape her, sexually abuse her. He ended up fathering 7 of her children. And this guy, he was twisted, right? So, like, completely twisted. So 3 of the children that Elizabeth had with her father were allowed to live upstairs. And Joseph would stage like these baby findings. So he would put the baby in the bush or like on like near the house somewhere so he could pretend that he found the baby, and there would be a note written in Elizabeth's handwriting saying, I can't take care of my son or my daughter. And so his wife Rosemary just accepted it, and I'm like, no. Like, this lady had to have known. There's no way, right? Like, your husband has a basement and you're never allowed to go in it. The first thing I would do is when he's at work is go in there. Like, the very first thing. Because if it's that much of a secret, then what are you hiding down there? So unfortunately, one of Elizabeth's children passed away hours after he was born. So not only was he never questioned by his wife, he was also never questioned by social services. Like, what is social services doing? All these babies just start appearing and not a single person is like, hey, that's really strange. We need to contact your daughter because she's just having babies and abandoning them if that were the case. Like, nothing. They were just like, oh, okay. You know, like, not even thinking about it. So for the next 24 years, Joseph continued to keep his daughter captive, not let her leave the basement, not let any of her children that were remaining downstairs leave or ever see the light of day until 2008, when one of Elizabeth's 3 children that was living downstairs with her in the cellar, who was 19, so 19 years have passed at this point. Her name was Kirsten. She got sick, and Elizabeth begged her father, like, we need to get Kirsten help. She needs to see a doctor. Like, she begged him to get Kirsten medical help. And so Joseph agrees. And at that point, he takes her to the hospital, and he kind of does the same thing he had done with the staging of the babies. He makes Elizabeth write a letter saying that she left her because she was really ill and she couldn't afford to take care of her, and basically asking her parents to take care of her for her and explaining her illness, right? So at this point, finally, 19 years later, the police start to think that this is suspicious because Kirsten looks really, really pale. You can tell she probably hasn't had dental work. She has a lot of light sensitivity, so they're like, something's going on. And so they start investigating Kirsten and asking her questions. So they decide to reopen the case. So for some reason, I don't know if it's because he was old, I don't know if he just knew he was going to get caught, but on April 26, 2008, Joseph Fritzl let his daughter Elizabeth Fritzl out of the cellar with her 2 remaining children that were down there with her. Elizabeth runs to the hospital, and her first thought is, I need to go see my daughter, I need to go see how she is. So she runs to the hospital to be with Kirsten. When she gets there, she is questioned by the police, and she tells the police that if they guarantee that she will never have to see her father again, that she will tell them everything that happened. And so they do, and Elizabeth begins to tell them this harrowing, dark, unbelievable story of how she spent the past 24 years held in captivity in her own home by her own father, who had raped and abused her from the moment of her captivity until the moment of her release, how he fathered 7 of her children. How one of the babies died in the cellar due to no proper care. I mean, this poor girl had to birth children in a cellar that's probably wet and damp and cold without help from anybody, without any kind of medical attention. Elizabeth also ended up telling the police that the sexual abuse had began at age 11 by her father, and that her being in the dungeon wasn't the first time that her father had abused her. The abuse had started before, and I think we see this sometimes where maybe an abuser won't abuse all of his children, and he or she just picks one child to abuse or take their anger out on. She told them, no, this started before I was captive. It's probably the reason he decided to keep her captive, to continue to do these awful things to her. That same night, Joseph Fritzl was arrested. And I mean, thank God, right? Like, my whole thing is, what about Rosemary Fritzl? What about her mother? She just says, great, okay, Elizabeth ran away, she joined a cult, just believes her husband, who has a basement that she cannot go downstairs to. And what about the noise? I mean, Elizabeth had 7 babies down there. Not any of them cried or made enough noise for Rosemary to hear. And even if it was, let's say, padded and insulated so it was completely soundproof, she never thought that it was weird that these babies would just appear and Joseph would just happen to find them with a note from Elizabeth, and that Elizabeth just never showed up. And that, for me, it's the basement. Like, you don't go downstairs to the basement at all. Like, not even when he's at work. It just doesn't make sense to me. So Joseph was arrested, and he was found guilty of 1 count of murder for baby Michael, who was Elizabeth's child that passed away in the basement, for negligence, because he held her down there without any medical attention for her baby. And he also received 20 years for the crimes of rape, incest, enslavement, kidnapping, and imprisonment, and for the imprisonment of Elizabeth. Joseph was ultimately sentenced to life in prison for 15 years without the possibility of parole, or without the possibility of parole for 15 years. He continues to be in prison, and I mean, that man should never see the light of day, ever. Like, even his face is, like, you could just tell that he's a monster. Understandably, due to all the trauma and everything that Elizabeth and her children went through, Elizabeth and the 3 children that were with her downstairs in the dungeon basement had to undergo extensive therapy, as well as therapy to begin to get adjusted to light as well, because they were kept down there in the cellar. And so, especially her children had never seen the light of day. She had been there for 24 years. So they also had to go through therapy to get adjusted to light, to get adjusted to life again itself. Her other children, the ones that were raised upstairs, also went through therapy, because for them it must be like, what, like, my mom was downstairs and my grandfather is also my father and he did this to my mother, and, just the reality of how vile and monstrous their grandfather really was, and what he was capable of doing to his own daughter. Elizabeth and all of her children now have new identities, and they live in a village that's undisclosed for privacy, and there she continues to live her life with her children. I can't imagine what this poor girl went through every day of those 24 years, what her children went through, what she possibly continues to go through now in the trauma and trauma recovery. And it just shows you how vile human beings can be. And hopefully Joseph Fritzl dies in prison, like one of those really slow and painful deaths. And he never deserves to see the light of day again. It's really amazing that Austria has been able to keep Elizabeth and her children completely out of sight, out of the public eye. The only pictures of Elizabeth that exist are the ones from before she disappeared into the basement. So they have really been able to keep her identity closed, and as well as the identities of her children. And I'm sure that, you know, after everything this girl has been through, the last thing she probably wants to do is have media around her all the time, you know, have to relive this all the time. I'm sure, well, I don't know, but hopefully she is recovering and happy and able to live out the rest of her days with her children. And that, guys, was the case of Joseph Fritzl. I have a lot more cases that I'm going to review. If you guys want me to review a specific case, leave it down in the comments below. And nos vemos next time. Bye.